welcome to Studio A3R. I am your host, Jennifer Sertle. Studio A3R is dedicated to feature people and resources that help strengthen personal resilience, responsiveness, and reflection. It is my belief that your competitive advantage is the way you scan your environment and make decisions. And I hope that this program helps you make even better decisions. Today's guest is actually a very special friend and corporate rebel, Céline Schillinger, who has recently published Dare to Unlead: The Art of Relational Leadership in a Fragmented World. She has been all over this fragmented world as a change agent, public speaker, and consultant. She is an award-winning expert, and there are over 20 awards in the category of employee engagement and workforce development, but I'm just going to name the top 3. In 2017, she was honored from the country of France as a Knight of the French Merit for her change efforts for women in the workplace. And her book, Dare to Unlead, actually was a Porch Light leadership book of 2022, and she also received the Internet Time Alliance J. Cross Memorial Award, among so many others. And so welcome to the program, Céline. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm thrilled to be here.
So I really like the phrase, the art of relational leadership. So what is relational leadership?
So relational leadership is, in my opinion, the leadership we need in the 21st century and beyond. It's a leadership that focuses on relationships, on creating relational capability at scale in organizations in order for people to do a better work, to feel better at work, but also to deliver better services, products, and so on. It is pretty different from the leadership we've been used to since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, basically, where we relied on a few experts or leaders or people standing above others who gave us instructions, gave us ways, things to achieve, things to do, the vision by which we should be guided, and we all followed. I think this leader-follower model is obsolete. It doesn't serve us anymore. It doesn't serve leaders either, even. It puts too much load on too few shoulders. And I suggest we change that and focus on creating a deep, dense social fabric within the organization that combines, that ties, that bonds all perspectives, different views of the world, all of us basically working in organizations, instead of letting us in our little silos and relying on a few gatekeepers to keep us connected. I think we can, this way, by focusing on creating a dense social fabric, become more agile as organizations and happier as workers.
I really appreciate your use of the term fabric. I mean, the word text actually comes from textile, where originally stories were woven in threads and kind of shown in kind of art. So I just like the idea that you're talking about this art of relational, and you're talking about the fabric of community. And right now I keep hearing we need more leadership. We're in a leadership crisis. And then you use the phrase unleadership. I've never seen unleadership before. It seems counterintuitive.
It is a bit of a provocation, but not so much when you think about it. I find this focus we're putting on leaders as saviors, as heroes, as supreme, superior kind of human beings is very detrimental to our collective success. It creates fragility. Social fragility, economic business fragility, because we tend to rely on a few individuals. And we basically always end up being disappointed. Haven't you seen that? It's quite funny. Because having those kind of worshipping those kind of super larger than life, heroes is also a convenient way for the rest of us to say, okay, I'm not in charge, and to handle responsibility to other people. So it's a convenient yet detrimental, collectively, practice that I suggest we revisit. And instead of cultivating this leadership by a few, by an elite, by a sort of a special cast of people, I suggest we look at ourselves honestly and realize that we have more power than we think, and that we don't have to relinquish this power. We can exercise this power all together, and we will be much more effective that way. Instead of so it's about spreading accountability and responsibility across a larger number of people, and for leaders who have been accustomed to giving instructions to others or standing above others, well, it takes stepping down from their leadership pedestal a little bit, but not, this is something they will find immense value in, actually, because instead of pooling everybody else, even they're pooling people and projects, across all difficulties and complexities of the world, well, then they are able to share responsibility with much more people. And it is not idealistic view. I have exercised that. I have seen that in practice in very different organizations, even very large one and quite conservative ones. And it works. It works when you truly invite people into leadership, into collective leadership, relational leadership. It just works because people want to make a difference. People want to matter. And I think we are sort of tired of being deprived of our agency, our creativity, our capacity to innovate, our capacity to make a difference at an individual level and together.
So when I hear you talk this way, it almost requires the self-esteem of each person to be higher, and that I have a voice and I can make a difference. You mentioned we are not the employees we used to be.
Yes, that's true. I believe the context and our aspirations have changed greatly since these recipes of management and leadership were invented 100 years ago. We are now many more people on the planet. It's more difficult to coexist. It's more because we're diverse and moving and blended, and the certainties of the past are gone. COVID, technological improvements, etc., have added their load of anxiety on people, and our social values have changed. The way we relate to hierarchy, to authority, have changed, and we don't take things for granted anymore. The individuation of needs as well has made collective agreements more difficult, and so if we believe that we can just, lead groups of people, employees, employee communities as we used to 30 or 20 years ago, we just miss immense opportunities. For today's recipes are different. So people might regret the fact that we are no longer as obedient and as easy to manage as we were in the past. You hear, some maybe older people complaining about the younger people who are not as obedient as they think the elder ones were. But it's a fact, and we need to play with that. And I think those new values, those new aspirations offer immense opportunities for our organizations, for our businesses, and not in an exploitative or utilitarian kind of way. I'm talking about real opportunities to connect people, to trigger or to tap into this energy that wants to be useful, right? And which is very often constrained by old, obsolete management paradigm. And there are ways today in which we can precisely put this energy to better use.
It's a bit of a paradox, because when I hear you say individuation, I think of something growing up and being more mature. And the way that you express that we as employees and as individuals can be more mature is actually to be more rebellious and to create new pathways. So it's just a little bit of a paradox. It's kind of interesting. I believe that you can't give away something that you don't possess, right? And so part of your gift is really being a change agent and encouraging and teaching others how to be change agents. When did you first describe yourself as a change agent?
So this whole question relates to agency. And I believe that the power of agency, the willingness, the capability, the ability to act is what needs to be nurtured. And by creating different contexts, you can make people realize they have agency. Instead of switching it off, you switch it on, basically. And for me, this happened at a very specific moment about 12 years ago or something, when at some point I felt frustrated, more and more frustrated by how conservative my organization was and how little opportunities it was offering for women in the workplace in particular. And at some point I took an unexpected and unprompted initiative, a very personal initiative that became viral. And that was a total surprise for me. And that was a beginning of a movement of employees gathering around the purpose of creating a more open, more diverse corporate culture in tune, in line with the diversity of the world we were serving, or we wanted to serve better. And that little step aside, doing this little thing that had not been asked from me, that was not expected, that was unsolicited, this unsolicited letter to the CEO that triggered a movement because it captured something that was, I think it was present somewhere. So it catalyzed a sort of energy that was not being even visible to people. And so this movement, this personal move opened me up to the power of agency, of inviting people into a space where they can truly make decisions, they can truly think by themselves, they can truly be creative in support of a common purpose. And I thought, when I saw the effect of that, it was fantastic. The people I had seen for years as colleagues nearby revealed themselves, and I saw them very differently as activists, as positive change makers, full of ideas, full of energy, and I thought, whoa, this way of working should be used to serve business purposes, not just societal change, because there's a huge potential for value creation here. And so since that moment, so that was 12 years ago, that became my job, basically. I switched my career to serve that all the time, day and night almost, because I think it's a beautiful opportunity for organizations and for people as well.
What I really appreciate about your story, and thank you for sharing, is that you became a voice for something that you noticed that was significant. And there was a gestalt around, thank you for saying that, there was this collective sigh of yes, right? And for anyone out there that's working on something, sometimes you may not know the impact of you just claiming what you see and doing what you think the next best thing is. The ripple effect, I was lucky to meet Céline 6 years ago, where she was halfway through this ripple effect. So it took 6 years of the ripple for it to hit my network. But boy, when it hit my network, it was infectious. So I can absolutely see that, which is great. Mentorship is key to success. And right now we have 4 generations in the workplace. And so there's almost this idea that you almost need a mentor and almost every decade. I would love you to share some of the best advice you've been given, and then also the best advice that you give.
So this is a great question, and I'd like to start with a note on the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. I can't remember where I heard that, but I thought that was really important. Somebody noticed that when men are mentored, they emerge as better professionals with more recognition, a better position. And when women are mentored, they emerge with better self-awareness. So women may not actually need mentors, but sponsors. Sponsors are people who will advocate for them, who will help them find opportunities, who will, talk about them in whatever places so that they can access more opportunities. So I would suggest to beware that word, mentorship. What is that mentor going to really do for you, and if it's only self-awareness, you can maybe skip the time and the energy, because there are plenty of opportunities to develop that self-awareness, and that's not necessarily the only thing we need. It's important, it's really, really important, but it's not the only thing we need. And now back to your question, what is the best advice I was ever given? It is to develop my external network, so that my future doesn't depend on what my company or my managers say about me. The second best advice was to tell the story, myself, instead of having it told by whatever corporate communication department or so. Telling it myself, opening up a blog, speaking up in conferences, creating this freedom, which has not been easy all the time, I must say, but creating this freedom to speak about my ongoing work has been phenomenal, because then the how can I say, the effect is that you share knowledge while it is being built, and so you're able to accelerate it immensely thanks to all the input and all the new connections that take place while this thing, project or initiative, whatever, is being developed, rather than coming at the end of something and telling, hey, ta-da, look at what I've done, offering a finished product. It's nice for the ego, but it's not great for learning. So finding ways to share in progress work, or even unfinished, ideas, questions, is really powerful.
So the reference Sheryl Sandberg wrote in Lean In, the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. And I wish we'd had this conversation last week at International Women's Day, and I had an opportunity to be on a platform. And I love that distinction, and I'd forgotten that distinction. So in my future questions, I'll probably be asking a lot more about sponsorship and probably less about mentorship. You also talk about the emergence of trust. And I was curious, because I felt like, hasn't trust always been there? Or is there a shift going on? Or the issue of trust?
I feel there's a shift. I feel there's a shift with the individuation of needs. Some speak about individualization of society. Trust has become more difficult to give. It has become a higher value currency, and so it's not something that is necessarily given, naturally at scale by everybody. There's plus it's an iterative, thing to that lives and dies, and when it dies, it's very difficult to revive it. Extremely difficult. So it's not just a word you can put on the walls. I remember an initiative in a former company I used to work for. The initiative was called Trust in Leadership, and it made everybody smile, because trust is not an intent; it's a result. It's the result of actions. It's not something it's not a slogan, right? So, what are the actions that demonstrate that you trust people, or that you trust your team, or your employees or your leaders. What are the actions that support trust? And I think by creating the right type of context, the right type of environment where people are not blamed for mistakes, for example. I mean, in a fear and blame culture, you can call for trust as much as you want. It will not happen. It will not emerge. I remember this anecdote, I speak about it sometimes, where also at a former employer, there was a nagging problem affecting production, and two people found the solution to that problem and went to report it to the head of industrial operations. And he shouted back at them for not coming sooner. They should have come sooner with the solution. So what do you think? The next time a problem occurs and next time people have a solution, what do? Well, they will keep their mouths shut, of course. Don't want to be shouted at, So that's how you kill trust. And that's how you kill innovation, basically, and creativity and agency, the agency we were talking about in the beginning.
So in addition to agency, there is structural issues. Like you can be a strong agent, but there are still some structural issues. I wonder if you can share maybe one or two things that an organization can do to structurally be more adaptive to leverage collective intelligence for their employees.
I would suggest to strongly invest, maybe not money, but at least time and attention, focus, support, strongly invest in networks and communities. Networks as technologies, networks as organizing principles, communities as places where people can share knowledge, can get together, can contribute to a common purpose beyond what's written in the org chart, right? So creating opportunities to densify the fabric, the social fabric we were talking about, to multiply connections so that the system gets better, gets more connected to its own diversity, instead of keeping its own diversity into little silos or tubes, But so how can organizations invest much more into networks and communities? That means putting them on the front stage, revisiting the performance management system, revisiting how, management processes are organized, to make more space for networks and communities.
So for those that have the capacity to build capacity for productivity, what I'm hearing you say is that there should be inputs for time for learning and dialogue, and that building networks, it's not an algorithm thing. It's not an app you can apply. It's not a technology that can accelerate. It's actually, it takes capacity. It takes intentionality, and it actually does take time because trust takes time to work.
Yes, really, it does. And if you cannot necessarily create that by technology, but you can adopt technology that kills that or that makes it impossible. For example, technologies that rely on closed communities, invite-only communities that put secrecy as the core principle of work. All this maintains, perpetuates this old invitation-only, elite-based kind of system, which is not agile, which is fragile. It has really too many fragility points. So yes, you cannot solve all issues with technology, but you can make the right choices so that technology doesn't hamper your capacity to create this social.
So anyone being tasked with any corporate community initiative, I really encourage you to read Dare to Unlead as a best practice book. It's a bibliography of the history of management theory, and in it there are very practical insights to help design cohesive communication and ways to strengthen your team, the fabric that Céline was talking about. Thank you for joining us today, Céline.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
You've been listening to Céline Schillinger, author of Dare to Unlead. I want to acknowledge our producer, Scott Fitzgerald at Rockfox Studio here in Rochester, New York. And our music is from Anthony Molina. You can reach me at Jennifer@agility3r.com or, of course, on Twitter at Jennifer Sertle. Thank you for joining us.